Can you imagine being put in a garden that God made, that God created? Can you imagine that? That's hard to believe. But here was Adam and Eve in this garden, and they were fixing to fall from that beautiful spot they were in. How do you and I fall today if we do not maintain our connection with God as we're supposed to? We fall. So let's look at God's question, where art thou? And this is what he said. Has God had to say to you, where art thou, since you've been saved? Since you got saved, were you found in the beer joint? And God came along and he's looking for you, but he don't go in beer joints. So he's calling, where art thou? Where are you? Where are you? I can't find you. Where are you? You're my child now. You've asked me into your heart. And now you've disappeared all of a sudden. You are in a place you're not supposed to be. You're married and you're with some other woman. You're out of your sync with God. And he's, where art thou? Some men, some men and some women, they stumble through life, separated from the presence of God, because they've walked away from him, and they do not want to get back with him, and their communion has been broken. Now he says in verse 9, where art thou? Categorically, this is something terrible, and God knew the fall, and he knew the full will where Adam was. And Adam, however, needed to realize something that was drastically wrong. When creatures whose chief delight had been to fellowship with God suddenly began to run away, and they hid from him. The first words from fallen man were half-truths. They were half-truths. Evasions, attempts to discrepancies. And I heard thy voice. That means sound in the garden. I was afraid. Oh, he never was afraid before when he saw God. I was naked. He didn't know he was naked before he sinned. I hid myself. Verse 10. He never had hid himself before. God's first question in verse 11. Who told thee thou was naked? Was designed to arouse guilt. Adam must have done something to make him realize that he was naked. God's next question, hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? Was designed to drive Adam to admit his guilt. God notices Adam's threefold response to God's interrogation. He refused to admit guilt. He blamed the woman directly, and he blamed God indirectly. Adam had aspired to godlikeness, but he now stood before God shamefaced and guilty. He had no defense. He was convicted. His excuses were not worth refuting. As God turned to interrogate Eve, his question pointed to the enormity of her deed. Eve also refused to admit guilt and blamed the serpent. She too was conceived, and her excuses were likewise not worthy to be refuting. Tremendous anatomical changes occurred as a result of man's sin and God's judgment. The serpent had apparently walked on legs before the fall. Now, God commanded him to go on his belly and to eat dust. Speculation has been made as the exact identity of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Ancient Jewish commentators suggest that the serpent may have been what we know as a dinosaur, and that the curse accounts for its extinction. However, one would have to admit that a legless dinosaur would make a rather large snake. In any event, God not only judged the serpent as the instrument of temptation, but also Satan as the instigator of the temptation. In verse 15, God gave the first prophecy in the Bible, spoke to Satan, announcing the conflict of the ages as a general principle. God gave a prophecy after man had broken down in sin. The conflict between Satan and Christ will result in Satan's winning a temporary victory. Thou shalt bruise his heel. But it will terminate in Christ's seed of the woman, ultimately defeating Satan's completely. It shall bruise thy head. That you bruise the head, that's the end. The heel doesn't matter a whole lot. But you bruise the head, you've done something. Adam and Eve were also changed in the results of sin. Woman would experience pain in childbirth. To ensure a woman's willingness to conceive, God gave her a heightened sexual desire. Thy desire shall be to thy husband. She was also made subject to her husband. He shall rule over thee. Now, it is a proper thing for a woman to sexually desire her husband. If she remains in her properness and not the permissiveness of the world today, which has turned sex into lust. The lust of a woman for her husband sexually is proper lust. Evil lust would be to sexually desire somebody who's not her husband. Now, God gave her that desire to be put on to her husband. And so when he comes home from work, she's there. And she's primped out. And she meets her husband at the door. And she bids him, come on in, I got your supper ready. I got your snack. I got you ready. She's dressed very pleasant. She acts very pleasant. She is earnest and honest in her relationship with her husband. And that relationship is to never, ever, ever be shared with another man. Until death do us part, she said, when she married that man. And he said, until death do us part. That means that if you have anything you need to iron out, you need to iron it out every day. You need to never, not ever. And a man told me this when I married my wife. You kiss her every night. You kiss her good night every night. He said, I don't care if all hell broke loose in the house, whatever happened. You mend it before you get in that bed chamber. That bed chamber is a sacred place. It was given to you by God. And when you have a problem that affects the bed chamber, you have a serious, serious, serious problem in your household. The bed chamber is to never be disturbed by anything. That's the place where your wife can give herself to you and you can give yourself to her and things will be fine. But when you disturb that area of the house, you have problems. Because of the fall, man perspiring freely would have to earn his living from a cursed ground that brings forth thorns and thistles. And creation was cursed because of man's sin. Sinful man could not exist in a perfect environment. The environment had to be cursed, so its conditions would match man's, and the whole creation earnestly looks forward to the time when the curse will be lifted. Romans 8:19 through 21. In spite of the darkness of the moment after the fall, Adam manifested faith by calling his wife Eve, mother of all living. Genesis 3:20. They accepted their garments provided by God. For man's own good, God drove Adam and Eve from the perfect environment of the Garden of Eden. Back to the marriage vows. We got a couple minutes. You break your marriage, you will never, not ever, on this earth, come to the completeness that you had when you married the first time. That first time was supposed to be God's time for your love for each other. To never, not ever, be broken. Not ever be broken. I can't say, I don't know how to say it in the way it needs to be said, but not ever can be broken. That means you have to give and take. You need to settle matters, whatever the matter be. You need to settle matters. You need to sweep the dust out from under your feet, from under your marriage, but between you. If you have any dust between you, you need to remove it immediately. Do not let it fester. Do not let it fester. It's like laying a piece of bread on a dirty bench and it's ruining it. Don't let it fester. Take care of it. Get it out of your life. Keep your life clean with each other, just like you keep your life clean between you and God. You keep your life clean with each other. Well, we will see you next time. Enough for the marriage counseling. But we all needed it through our life, and still do. Many still do today. See you next time, right? Bye-bye.